Chasing Purpose was designed to empower, uplift, and enlighten you on your journey in chasing your purpose.
Don't waste your time with thoughts of giving up.
Chasing Purpose.
Not too late for us to try. We can overcome.
Chasing Purpose. Candid conversations, nurturing faith, pursuing aspirations, setting intentions.
Together we rise, divided we fall. Let Jah lead the way.
Chasing Purpose.
Cause God always a listen.
Chasing Purpose.
One day I have to win. That's why I'ma try again.
Chasing Purpose. Mondays, 7 p.m. on Arijam Radio, Arijam 360, or arijamradio.com. Hosted by Cynthia Shea.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I'll like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains, and I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of
Welcome to Chasing Purpose, heard every Monday at 7 p.m. right here at our home at Arijam Radio, on our app at Arijam 360, as well as arijamradio.com. We love to hear your views and reviews. Please share them with us at 888-546-8742. That's 888-546-8742. You can also email us at chasingpurposeonirijam@gmail.com. Stay connected with us via our social media platforms on Facebook, Chasing Purpose, and be sure to join our Facebook group entitled Purpose Soars. Follow us over on Instagram at chasingpurpose_on-purpose. Be sure to follow, like, and share. Grab a pen, grab your journals, grab a glass of water as we dive into more candid conversations. Our stories have been colored by triumph as well as struggle. Still, no matter how many times we have fallen, we get back up. No matter how many times we face adversity, we handle it head on. No matter how many times we have come under attack for the mere color of our skin, we rise up. That is the power of will. Welcome to Chasing Purpose, where we have candid conversations on nurturing faith, setting intentions, pursuing aspirations, all while living boldly. I am your host, Cynthia Shea. Now, for the month of February, we continue our focus on setting intentions and, of course, the importance of doing so on the journey of chasing our purpose. Our guest this evening is Dr. Isis Semaj-Hall, lecturer, writer, and editor. Isis is also the host of the thought-provoking For Posterity podcast. Isis is a bad gal scholar whose feminist intersection is decidedly decolonial. She is a dub doctor with a PhD in Caribbean literature. We want to connect with Dr. Semaj as we are celebrating Black History Month. We must continually educate ourselves and in doing so ensure that our children learn about culture, our culture, all while celebrating the power and struggle of our Black people. So let's move the conversation forward. While today's show is celebrating Black History Month, we want to make it absolutely clear that we celebrate our ethnicity from January 1 to December 31, all day, every day. Isis, welcome to Chasing Purpose. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. What is the mission behind For Posterity podcast?
So my For Posterity podcast was launched a year ago or so in January of 2020. And the reason that I launched this podcast was because I wanted to have conversations with people about today's art, today's issues, today's culture, today's politics, so that future generations would know what mattered to us now. I wanted to be able to record that and keep that somewhere so that people can go back to that in the future.
Awesome. All those topics are very important for us to be learning and to be moving our conversation and our race, our people forward. Who are some of your literary heroes?
Well, I have a few. And actually, the name of the podcast comes from one of them, and that's Edwidge Danticat. Okay. She's a Haitian-American writer and actually also an activist as well. And in one of her collections, which is titled Clarke, there's a short story in there where she is a grandmother and a granddaughter talking and dealing with some serious issues. But one of the things that these two characters discuss is how important posterity is. And what does it mean, right? What does it mean to age? What does time mean? What do generations mean? And for that reason, I grabbed that little phrase for posterity from that text. And certainly I would identify Edwidge Danticat as a literary hero of mine. I would also name Jamaica Kincaid, an Antiguan author, and Anthony Winkler, a Jamaican author whose amazing ability to capture humor is bar none. And I think I would also name Roger Mays for his politics, right? The way that he doesn't mince words and says it just like it is about what our people need to do in order to be better.
We are starting a book club here on Chasing Purpose, so we were going to make sure to add some of those to our list. Thank you for that. The great Marcus Garvey said, liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. How do we remain focused on this directive?
I think one way to do so is to really liberate ourselves from silence. We have to understand that the power of our voice will take us anywhere. We need to hear our voices, listen to our inner voice, and speak when we need to. We need to assert ourselves in public spaces and demand that we have attention, right? That we are whole people, like Black lives do matter. So I would say liberate ourselves from silence and liberate ourselves from fear. And that's how we move forward.
Liberate ourselves from silence, liberate ourselves from fear. Major key. Or purposeful pull. Our focus this month is setting intentions. What intention are you setting for yourself personally and professionally?
I think it's really just to be more patient with myself. I think that's something that we probably all need to do, is to just take time and realize that we need rest. We should honor our bodies, honor our minds, and take time, not put too much pressure on ourselves. There's always going to only be 24 hours in each day, of which we need at least 8 hours of sleep. And so we need to kind of divide up our time in a responsible way so that we're not putting too much pressure on ourselves. That's how I'm setting the intention for myself going forward. Every day I have to remind myself, take time. Just take time, one foot at a time, one word at a time, and I'll be able to make the difference that I want to make.
Yeah. What about professionally?
The same, right? So it's to take time. When I mentioned to take time in terms of word after word, as a writer, as a scholar, so much of my work is tied up in the mind. And that can be exhausting, right? There's a difference between going to a 9-to-5 job where, at 5:01, you're off the clock. But in this kind of space where you're always thinking and cultivating new ideas and wanting to bring them into fruition, one's work never ends, right? There's no off-clock time. Dreams can come into the work. So I have to realize that I have to give myself space to mold ideas, to let them build and come together in a way that will make sense. And it only can do that in time.
In time. I love that. As a writer, are there certain things that you have to do to kind of get into a zone? Do you go off to a certain place, or how do you prepare yourself for writing your material?
Well, that's great that you mentioned kind of going off into a place. Honestly, the writing comes easiest for me when I have distance, literal spatial difference. So if I leave my own home or my traditional office and go to another space, ideas, thoughts just seem to come together in a much more organic way. Sometimes it feels that when you sit at the computer and you say it's time to do work, all the words disappear and the head just fills with silence. So it's hard in that way. But for me, sometimes it's about getting away. Sometimes just getting away is all I need to do. And I'm building up meditation, trying to work in those regards so that I can take myself away even when I physically have to remain tethered to a particular space.
We speak a lot about the importance of journaling here. How important is journaling to you as a writer?
It's a great window. It's a great window into the self. And there is much less pressure in that regard. I find that sometimes I can just write about myself and my day, the worries that are entering into my head. And once I clear those, as in dumping them from my head onto the pages of my own private journal, I'm able to get to the next step in whatever it is that I'm trying to think through. So I certainly recommend journaling to anyone who hasn't tried it yet. You don't have to make it a daily practice, but sometimes when the world seems too heavy, it's easier to just let it come out of you, let that stress exit your body via pen or via a note in your phone, and just let the words dump out and you'll feel so much better. I know it worked for me and it does allow me to write.
Yeah, same. Totally agree. All right. On that note, hold on to those journals. When we return, we continue our discussion on the power of will.
Irie Jam.
93.5 VIP.
February is Reggae Month. One beat, one voice. Irie Jam.
The COVID pandemic has fostered a health and economic crisis our district was not prepared for. I'm Latoya Benjamin, City Council candidate for District 31. In the challenging days ahead, we need a representative that embodies the definition of political courage and a passion for community. I'm running because if I do nothing, then nothing will change. Vote for Latoya Benjamin as your first choice on Tuesday, February 23rd, because it's time for your local government to reflect your true values. And the time is now.
The Gleaner Premium will excite your digital media experience, satisfy your appetite for exclusive stories and special access to editors' fora, videos, podcasts, and much more. To subscribe, go to jamaica-gleaner.com/premium and select the e-Gleaner or website option. Welcome to your new digital experience, the Gleaner Premium.
Free until February 28th.
My name is Sean Rux. I'm running for City Council in the upcoming special election this February 23rd for District 31, Southeast Queens. I currently serve as Deputy Superintendent for the local school district, and I've made it my life's work to convince any parent and child to choose and fight for education. And together, we need to take this fight to City Hall to pass resolutions that can save lives while they're young. Join me. Help me, and let's teach City Hall that education saves lives. Remember to vote for me, Sean Rux, this February 23rd.
Paid for by Committee to Elect Sean Rux.
Get into a new ride during the Start Something New sales event at Star Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. This month, lease a new 2021 Jeep Renegade Latitude 4x4 for only $129 per month. Or lease a 2021 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited 4x4 for only $249 per month. Savings like these won't last long, so visit Star Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Queens Village or online at starchrysler-dodgejeep.net. All prices plus tax, title, reg, DMV, and acquisition fee extra. Renegade 4100, do it signing 36 months. Grand Cherokee $49.99, do it signing 24 months, 10,000 miles. All rebates to dealers. Zero security ends 1/31/2021.
Southeast Queens and the Rockaways needs an elected official that's going to put people before politics. Working class people need a fighter. Vote Manny Silva February 23rd.
MannySilvaNYC.com, paid for by Silva for Council.
I'm Joe, your CBD expert. Jamaica Smooth's tinctures are CBD oils that help with everything from muscle and joint pains to anxiety, depression relief, and even promoting healthier sleeping patterns. The oils are all natural and organic, giving you one of the purest forms of CBD consumption. The Easy Squeeze Dropper provides 3 to 5 drops per dose under the tongue for any of our great tasting CBD oil flavors and is one of the most popular ways to intake CBD. Give us a call at 1-800-766-6847 or JamaicaSmooth.com.
February is Reggae Month. One beat, one voice. Irie Jam.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, the spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up. One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Now the war is not over. Victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. And then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory, oh, we'll cry glory,
Welcome back to Chasing Purpose. We enjoy being here with you each and every Monday, and we want to say thank you to all our purpose soarers who religiously join us each week. Our conversation continues with Mrs. Isis Semaj-Hall. So, Isis, what does the power of will mean to you?
The power of will, it means that I have autonomy. The power of will, it means that I have control over myself. And that's something I actually always remind my daughters of. Ever since they were very young, just 1 year old, my oldest daughter, when she was 1, I remember saying to her, you only have control over your body. You can't move other people. You can only control your own body. And I think there's something really important in recognizing that truth, and how it gives us much more power over ourselves, and it allows us a lot of release from the stresses of the world. We can't change other people. We can't move other people, except perhaps through example of what we do with our own bodies. So that's how I understand the power of will, is that I have control over myself. I have autonomy, and I can make decisions I can make ideas become reality.
I love that. I can make ideas become reality. Self-control. How important is faith on this journey?
Well, I think in the same regard, faith is critical, right? The faith is a belief in the intangible. It's belief in that which we can't hold on to, grasp. But in believing in it, it becomes real. In believing in it, we make it real, and we can manifest it into something that is something we can pick up. Those ideas in our head can be written down into a book, and we can hold up that journal and say, these are the thoughts that I had that day. This is the podcast that I created to capture that time. So I think that we have to hold faith in a broader regard as something that represents all of those intangible beliefs that we have, those feelings that we want to become reality. And that's why faith is a certain guiding point in my life.
Yes, I mean, so important. Now, let me ask, are you chasing your purpose, or have you found your purpose?
Well, okay, so I don't know if I want to say that I'm chasing my purpose, hunting for a purpose, hunting for my purpose, or even found it, because to find it suggests that it was missing, and I had to go in search of it. So I think what I would say is that I am shaping my purpose. Every day, I'm shaping my purpose. What I am meant to do is coming into fruition with every gesture and every action that I take. So I'm constantly shaping my purpose to fit each need that I have that comes in daily, right? There are parts that we can't expect, can't anticipate, but I'm working with it and shaping my purpose through life.
Right, great answer, I love it. How can we ensure that we are providing our children with a wholesome representation of themselves today?
I think one thing we need to remember about children is that they are fully human, that they're fully people. And what I would encourage anyone to do, something that I encourage myself to do daily, is to listen, is to actively listen to children.
I love
and
that.
if we do that, I think we will gain for ourselves, and we'll be able to bring them forward with, again, a strength in knowing that their voices matter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, listening. Something as simple, and that's something that we as parents, we don't do. And it'll be like, it may be because, so much things are happening, life is throwing everything at us, and just something as simple as just taking the time to listen will help shape them. So I love that answer.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What legacy should we be leaving for our children at this time?
We want to encourage our children to be courageous and creative. And the only way to leave that legacy is for us to be courageous and creative ourselves.
Courageous and creative. I love that. So we have 4 pillars here on Chasing Purpose that act as guides of chasing purpose. They are nurturing faith, setting intentions, pursuing aspirations, all while living boldly. So I'm going to ask you, how do you nurture your faith?
I nurture my faith by rising up every morning, honestly, right? So that recognition that I have breath in my lungs and I am ready to face the day just on the virtue of being alive. It's something that we can't take for granted anymore, right? If COVID-19 has taught us nothing else, is that we should take no day for granted and take no easy breath for granted. So in that very moment, that's when I take faith into my hands, in a sense, and say, here I am, time to seize the day.
Yeah. Okay, how about setting intentions?
So setting intentions, for me, it begins with getting my daughters organized. And it might sound strange to kind of put my own intentions out into other people's bodies in that way, but knowing that they're okay leaves me to be okay as well. So getting them organized every day for whatever they have to do in terms of schoolwork, eating, right? Just all these kinds of habits of getting your work done, taking in the right nourishment each day. All of these kinds of things help me to shape myself and shape my day every day.
Okay, what about pursuing aspirations?
So pursuing aspirations. Now, this is something that I think I bring into my life through reading, listening more and reading more, but being able to gain guidance and understanding from texts that gives me time to work through history, to work through society at a safe distance, and a distance that is still allowing empathy, so that I can have understanding for my fellow man, my fellow woman, and the environment. All of these parts play a critical role in how I'm communicating with and working with the world and the energy of the world.
And our last pillar, living boldly. Talk to us about you living boldly.
Well, living boldly. Oh, I think I try to do that through some of my fashion choices, right? So just through style and fashion, I think that's how we live boldly. You know, that's how we do it, right? We have to just add a little splash, right? So if we're going to be moving through this life, and not all people are people we're going to stop and be able to have a conversation with, I try to make my presentation of self say something about who I am. And by doing so, I think I show how I'm living boldly. I try to wear jewelry or clothing and think about those items as wearable art, right? I recognize all accessories as wearable art and a way of kind of presenting myself in a bold way that can invite conversation, but also represents who I am and helps me to live boldly in my purpose.
Yes, and yes. How can we use our innate strengths to keep us on a path of lasting progress as a people?
I think the only way to do so is to listen more and to read more. To do so actively for both. Deep listening and careful reading is one of the best ways that we can live purposefully in this world.
Yes, and yes. I love it. I mean, imagine where the world would be if we just listened more, if we just took up a book just a little bit more. As much as we invest our time going down the rabbit hole of social media, if we just put that in a book. Now, you've donned yourself the Bad Gal Scholar. Tell us about that.
Okay, so I call myself a Bad Gal Scholar because it's a way of me honoring the fact that I am from the Caribbean, that I am from Jamaica. And when I think about a bad gal, what I think about is someone who is bold, someone who is confident, a woman who is not afraid to speak her mind and demonstrate that she has a mind, a powerful mind, a woman who is not afraid of her body and is also confident to stand in that body of hers. So when I think about a bad gal, that's what I think about. And I'm also a scholar, right? And traditionally, this is a male space to be in scholarship, to be in academia. But as a woman, as a Black woman, as a Black Jamaican woman, I recognize all of those by calling myself a Bad Gal Scholar. That's where that name comes from.
So I'm a bad gal radio host, entrepreneur.
Clearly.
All these things.
Absolutely.
So Isis, let me ask you this: as a writer, right? What are some of the things that you write about?
Sure. So I tend to write about gender, about identity, about environment, about society. Sometimes it's dealing with music. Sometimes it's dealing with Caribbean literature. Sometimes it's dealing more broadly with African diaspora concerns. So one space that I do this in is in my blog, which is called Right Ponderidim. And the title, again, of that blog is meant to kind of capture the way that, or it's a play on words in a sense, the way that the DJ will ride Ponderidim and take on kind of contemporary topics in the moment as they happen. I established the blog as a way of writing on the rhythm as well. So taking note of what's important, what are people talking about, what are people writing about, what are people reading these days, and then making comments on those via the blog space. So these are some of the topics that I write about in academic spaces or academic journals. Also for my blog, which is a bit more of a kind of every man can read and access the text there. And I keep a blog. I should note that I keep a blog for the sake of wanting there to be kind of transparency. I want there to be fewer glass ceilings. I want there to be fewer gates and walls between what those in academia know and what those outside of academia know, right? This is kind of that way that Walter Rodney was dealing with the people, of being able to kind of break down borders and share the knowledge. There's no reason why it should belong to any one person and not to all. So that's a great reason that I established the blog, and also partly why I established a podcast, was to share these share what I know with people.
Right. How have your parents shaped your views on life and your academic journey?
So my parents are educators. My mother is an educator. She was a teacher and an assistant principal in the New York City Board of Education space. And when she moved to Jamaica with my father, they established a school. And my father was an educator as well. So his work was in psychology, and he went all the way with a PhD in the space. My mother has 2 master's degrees. So education was really big. It was very important for us to just kind of keep going and keep attaining all the knowledge that we wanted to from those spaces, but then also to give it back, right? To give that education back. That was also a very important part of my upbringing. And I think that that's the kind of tradition that I was born into. And I'm continuing that legacy of sharing out the knowledge. Take it in, but then share it out. It's not for me alone to keep.
Right. No, right. So important. Right. I mean, yes, we can't be, especially for us to move forward as a race, we have to pour into our next generation. We have to make sure that we're nurturing them and making sure that they know what our history and our past was. Absolutely. You know, because that shapes who we are and what the future will be. How can we use our innate strengths to keep us on a path of lasting progress as a people?
Our strength, I think, will have to come through our stillness. Now, that might sound kind of counterintuitive, right? Maybe one would think that there's a lot of action in developing strength, but I think that there's a way that we have to center ourselves in those still moments, in those peaceful moments. I think that's when we recognize our true power, is in our kind of quiet moment of gathering ourselves. So in stillness, I think, is how we will be able to come together and really make a difference as a people. And that's what's been happening. I think it's been happening quietly. So let's just see how it all unfolds, right? Let's see how that faith turns into something tangible.
Where can we find you? Where can our listeners find you?
Well, physically, I am in Jamaica, and I'm tethered to the University of the West Indies at the Department of Literature in English. On the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Isis Semaj-Hall. One can find me on Instagram at rhythm.writer. And you can find me just kind of milling about anywhere, reading and talking and sharing my ideas there. You can also send me an email if you really want to discuss something more, in depth or one-on-one at isissemaj-hall@gmail.com.
Awesome. So, Isis, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing space and time. We really appreciate you having you here on Chasing Purpose. Yes, for many of us, we are indeed standing on the shoulders of giants. That's why we keep reaching. That is why we keep triumph clutched tightly in our fists. We know deep down that we were built to win and that ultimately we are more than the color of struggle. We are the color of beauty. Now, before we go, Isis, I'm going to ask you to join us on this. We were gifted intention cards. They're called Epic Intentions. This is them here. So I want to say thank you to Stacey Hines for this. Thank you, Isis, for not pulling the top. For my radio listeners, I'm just pulling cards. So now these intention cards, they are to be used daily. So I'm going to pull a card, and they're really pretty neat. Especially because we're setting intentions, right? So the card I'm going to pull for you, Isis, it reads, this is the artwork here, it reads, I am a masterful creator. Look at that. I contemplate myself. Yeah, right? It reads, I contemplate myself as surrounded by the conditions I intend to create, by Wayne Dyer. That is spot on.
Is that what I have been saying this whole time or not?
Yeah, that's spot on. Okay, I'm going to do one for myself. Here it is. And it reads, I am intentional about my greatness.
Yes.
Guys, like, hello. All right, so, and just really quickly, my Facebook group persons, my IG people, we are going to be able to gift you with these intention cards. We will give you the instruction on doing so. So thank you, Isis, again for joining us. I am so grateful to have shared space and time with you. We want to say thank you to Stacey Hines for gifting us with these epic intention cards. I mean, talk about alignments and talk about timing. Thank you, of course, to our entire team here in Jamaica and in New York. Be sure to join us on Instagram at chasingpurpose_on-purpose. And we are going to leave you with a very timely message. Have a wonderful evening and a productive rest of the week. This is an ode to the gentle ones, the poets in the kitchen, the beautiful and the loud ones, the writer activists, all the author warrior queens of our world. They continue to remind us that we've been here, worthy and relevant as ever, from the beginning of time. Our stories have not always been easy to tell. Still, they've been told so brilliantly thanks to the work of these, our Black women wordsmiths. For decades upon decades, our voices have been amplified when we felt near muted and voiceless. Sojourner Truth, born 1797 in Rifton, New York as Isabella Belle Baumfree and died November 26, 1883. Though Sojourner's life began in captivity, she rose to become an author, abolitionist, and an early women's rights activist. She later escaped with her infant daughter to freedom in 1826. In 1828, after going to court to recover her son, Sojourner became the first Black woman to win such a case against a white man. She authored many speeches, but is widely acclaimed for her famous 1851 speech at the Women's Rights Convention. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man, when I could get it, and bear the lashes well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Ida B. Wells, July 16, 1862 to March 25, 1931. Ida B. Wells Barnett was an African-American educator, author, and investigative journalist whose work proved truly ahead of its time. She was an early leader in the civil rights movement, and history also remembers her as one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Some of her published works include On Lynchings, Southern Horrors, Crusade for Justice, and The Red Record. Zora Neale Hurston, January 7, 1891 to January 28, 1960. Hurston was an American author, anthropologist, and filmmaker. She emerged as one of the leading figures of the Harlem Renaissance. Known for her wit, irreverence, and beautiful folk writing style, Hurston also portrayed racial struggles in the early 1900s, American South, and published research on hoodoo. Zora Neale Hurston is best known for her literary works like Jonah's Gourd Vine, Mules and Men, Tell My Horse, and the classic Their Eyes Were Watching God, first published in 1937. Gwendolyn Brooks, June 7, 1917 to December 3, 2000. Gwendolyn Elizabeth Brooks was an American poet, author, and teacher. She won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry on May 1, 1950 for Annie Allen, making her the first African American to receive a Pulitzer Prize. She is best remembered for works like Riot, The Tiger Who Wore White Gloves, Beckonings, and Primer for Blacks, and her 1959 poem, We Real Cool. In her poem, she waxes, we real cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight, we sing sin, we thin gin, we jazz June, we die soon. Toni Cade Bambara, March 25, 1939 to December 9, 1995. Toni was born Miltonia Merkin Cade and was an African-American author, documentary filmmaker, social activist. Some of her works include Gorilla My Love, The Salt Eaters, and These Bones Are Not My Child. Nikki Giovanni, born June 7, 1943 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Yolande Cornelia Nikki Giovanni Jr. is an American poet, writer, commentator, activist, and educator. She used her linguistic strength to champion the cause of African Americans and the civil rights movement. She is best known for works like Black Feeling, Black Talk, Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day, Those Who Ride the Night Winds and Blues, For All the Changes. Giovanni will often drop gems like, show me someone not full of herself and I'll show you a hungry person. Jamaica Kincaid, born on May 25, 1949 in St. John's, Antigua as Elaine Cynthia Potter Richardson, the Antiguan American novelist, essayist, gardener, and gardening writer, works as Professor of African and African American Studies in residence at Harvard University during the academic year. Kincaid is best known for works like Annie John, Lucy, At the Bottom of the River, and the classic A Small Place. In her much celebrated Small Place novel, Kincaid writes, and then, out of the corner of your eye, you see someone looking at you and absolute pleasure is written all over the person's face. And then you realize that you are not as revolting a present as you think you are. And so, ordinarily, you are a nice person, an attractive person, a person capable of drawing to yourself the affection of other people, a person at home in your own skin, a person at home in your own house, with its nice backyard, at home on your street, your church and your community activities, your job, at home with your family, your relatives, and your friends. You are a whole person. Toni Morrison, February 18th, 1931 to August 5th, 2019. Chloe Anthony Wolford Morrison was an American novelist, essayist, book editor, and college professor. Morrison published her first novel, The Bluest Eye, in 1970. It was her critically acclaimed Song of Solomon that brought her national attention and subsequently won her the National Book Critics Circle Award. Alice Walker, born February 9, 1944, Alice Malsenior Tallulah Kate Walker is an American novelist, short story writer, poet, and social activist. In 1982, she won the National Book Award for the hardcover fiction and the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. She is best known for her works, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, The Temple of My Familiar, You Can't Keep a Good Woman Down, and her breakout 1982 novel, The Color Purple. This was later adapted to film and musical. Edwidge Danticat, born January 19, 1969 in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Danticat is a Haitian-American novelist and short story writer. Her first novel, Breath, Eyes, Memory, was published in 1994 and went on to become an Oprah's Book Club pick. Danticat's novels often document the Afro-Caribbean struggle, and over time her works have been much celebrated for their raw honesty and emotion. Some of her works include The Farming of Bones, Brother, I'm Dying, and The Dew Breaker. Amanda Gorman, born on March 7, 1998 in Los Angeles, California. Gorman is an African-American writing prodigy whose work center around feminism, race, and oppression. She is notably the first person to be named National Youth Poet Laureate. Her published works include the poetry book The One From Whom Food Is Not Enough, Change Sings, and The Hill We Climb. We thank you all for the possibilities that you have helped us to envision. And most of all, thank you for setting our collective imagination on fire.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
the color of my skin. Black is the color of my skin. I wouldn't have it any other way. Black is the color of my skin. You see me, do I make you feel inferior? Do I make you feel insecure? Well, I won't apologize for what God made me. I'm black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. Black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. You hate me 'cause you don't wanna accept that equally we are superiors. Black is the color of my skin. Black is the color of my skin. I wouldn't have it any other way. Black is the color of my skin. God made you. God made me. So why you wanna kill us like that? They say I'm free, but I'm really not. Freedom is mine, but it's in my mind. In reality, I'm still a slave. Let me go, stop oppressing me. I am fine, I'm a human being. Black is the color of my skin. Black is the color of my skin. I wouldn't have it any other way. Black is the color of my skin. I'm black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. I'm black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. I'm black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. A change is coming. You better recognize we're standing up for rights. Just like Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, many of the Maroons, we're gonna fight the fight. Black is the color of my skin. Black is the color of my skin. I wouldn't have it any other way. Black is the color of my skin. I'm black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. Black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. Black and I'm proud and I sing it out loud. Black is the color of my skin. Black is the color